Swords of Legends Online is a new MMO that recently launched in the West. I've been playing. A lot. And I wanted to get my first impressions of the game out and into the world. Little warning, I don't PvP, so I won't be saying anything on that aspect of the game. You'll have to go somewhere else for that information. Solo's English port has been out for about a week now, and I wanted to try out as much of the game as I could. That interests me. I enjoy raids and dungeons as my main form of content, and you can't really get a feel of those until the end game. As of now, raids haven't been opened, which isn't anything unusual for MMOs. They tend to give people a week or two to get used to new features before throwing the gates open. But I wanted to get a feel for what dungeons I could do, as well as their casual systems, and there's a surprising amount. Alright, so let's start with the movement. The movement in this game takes a second to get used to, but feels quite good and quite trash at the same time once you figure it out. The sprinting and running is great. You can't fly in cities, but if you run, your jump height is increased, and this combined with the triple jump means you can pretty much make it on top of any structure you see inside it. Even in dungeons, where you can only double jump, there are a whole buttload of skips where you can just clamber over the terrain and suddenly you're at the next boss. By default, the shift key is little dash, which is great for dodging out of AoEs and catching up to your insane tank who's pulled half the instance. Oh god, help me. My only problem with this is, if you use it while sprinting, which is double tap W by default, which is also giving me a headache, you stop. You just stop sprinting. No, that's not what I wanted, game. I wanted to sprint, dash, and continue running like I'm being chased. But that's just something I'm gonna have to get used to. The flying and air controls feel a little clunky. You get a limited speed boost that you can use to traverse distances faster. Problem is, you can only use it when you're not going to collide with any terrain. But sometimes you do use it, and you end up stuck on a lamppost or something. And then you have to wait to get your breath back before you can go again. It's a bit wonk. The edge of the map is also impossible to see if you're not staring at your minimap. So if you're headed to the next zone over and suddenly you can't move forward, you have to do some awkward flying around these invisible walls till you make your way around. As of right now, I have only really touched a Reaper, so I can't really speak on other classes. But from Reaper alone, I can say I'm enjoying it. Reaper is a class with two specs, melee DPS, Assassin, or Healer, Occultist, so I can't really say anything about tanks or ranged DPS, except for what I've seen others doing in dungeons. And that's a lot of second-hand info and estimations, so anything I do say, take it with a grain of salt. This game has an action combat camera and control scheme that you can toggle on and off with left control by default. I've almost exclusively tab targeted for most of my MMO experiences, but I tried action cam for this one, just to try it out and get a feel. It's done well. It honestly feels surprisingly good to be able to spam left or right click for my main two resource builders. I don't think I'm any more responsive than if I were to be using keyboard for them instead, but it felt like it was. The fact that I could quickly toggle it on and off for combat was really good too. Gave me the freedom to just explore the world without having to go into settings every time I wanted to start an encounter. The melee combat isn't anything we haven't seen before. It's your standard spend resources to build different resources to spend for big dick DPS. But it is solid and feels enjoyable to play. I have a basic damage ability that spends no resources but builds my special resource at a much slower rate. So even if I'm out of energy or edge or whatever you want to call it, I can still be spamming something on my keyboard. So even when I do have downtime, it doesn't really feel like it. Which is great for someone like me who constantly likes to be spamming stuff. Reaper healing? Again, nothing super special, but it is a lot of fun. I enjoy it more than the melee spec, which is saying something. I mained a rogue in WoW, a ninja in Final Fantasy XIV, and a thief in Guild Wars 2. I'm a DPS player. I like to slap men, not soothe them. But this time around, I'm loving it. The best way to describe it as an outsider looking in is a cross between a paladin and a shaman healer from WoW. I've effectively got a healing tide totem and a spirit link totem that's on a 2-minute cooldown, as well as a lay on hands and a 40-second cooldown and a 4-charge Light of the Martyr as my main heal. It's just... what? I've got a damn good chunk of spells to mess with, and it feels good to just see everyone start dropping, pop Spirit Link, and well, just start winning. I can't really say the same for other melee or healer specs, but from the pugging and max level dungeons I've been doing, the classes are relatively balanced in population, so take from that what you will. Who knows what meta will develop as the game has more time under its belt. I would love to say look at the Chinese servers, but the only stuff I can really find for them is from more recent iterations of the game, where fox mages and archers are a thing. So I truly do not know where the turbo nerds are going to throw us. Alright, so leveling. I played the game for 14 hours straight on launch. It was enjoyable. It took me about 16 hours to get to max level, and I only ran out of quest twice. Once at 33 and once at 36. Bear in mind, I am the kind of person to do every quest I can in an area before moving on. Looking at the world chat, some others also got stuck earlier, but a large chunk of people got stuck at these 2 points as well. Doing biographies got me a little XP, not a lot, but a little. Unlocking bounties and soloing some dungeons fixed this issue pretty quickly for me. I only did about 3 or 4 runs of Frostbitten Path to get me to cap, and about 3 bounties. It wasn't too hard, and I didn't feel too grinded out when I did have to do these things, which is always a good sign when it comes to Eastern MMOs. Little tip, make and eat as much XP buff food as you possibly can. It helps minimize any extra grinding time, and I didn't really have to grind a lot, but not everyone is into pounding their head against a wall until it breaks through. So with questing, there's not really anything super out of the ordinary. It was a lot of kill X of these and collect Y of those and go talk to this man over here. Just the usual. There were a few instances of using special vehicles like a ballista or being transformed to another character for some story elements, but they didn't really turn up all that often. They did have lines and floaty markers showing everything you needed to interact with, which is a little bit hand-holdy, but once I was going, I didn't really care. I will say the most of anything I had to kill was 12. Quest items had pretty much 100% drop rate, and you unlock flying very early into the leveling process. So what was translated well was very easy to do, which is absolutely fantastic for leveling alts. Throw on some videos or a podcast and just zone as you go. The story is pretty much the same for all classes, so you don't need to worry about missing anything the second time around. Alright, so what wasn't easy about the questing was unfortunately the translation. There's a heroic event, which is similar to a world quest from WoW, that you can unlock that made me collect baby birds for an NPC. The problem was, it told me to hand the chicks over to Jarmu, but the name of the NPC was translated to Littlewood over his head. But when I spoke to him, his name was Jarmu again. And he was hiding in a hut with some ducks, so I saw nothing over his head. It asked me to do several tutorials in the cultivation menu as well as I leveled. It was very hard to get any of these done, as it's like several separate people translated it and none of them saw the complete picture before they sent it off to be shoved in the game. Sometimes it was translated properly, but the punctuation was abysmal, and you need to think out of the box for some of these, or they really don't make sense. Alright, so the bad translation links quite well into the story. I only have a vague idea of what's going on. I made the mistake of starting off with the English voices.
My father is Mingyun Chen, the Grand Summoner of Heavenly Ridge. You rescued me. He will thank you.
Grand Summoner! Someone is attacking secretly!
Yeah, don't do this. Not only do some of them have a really off quality, the performance doesn't often match the text underneath, which is sometimes in Chinese. Then sometimes the voice acting will change to the Chinese VAs mid-scene, and I very quickly started skimming these scenes just to get out of that hell. And by the time I had finally swapped to the Chinese VAs, it was a little too late for me to get the full picture. The picture I do have is half decent. Nothing super engaging, but nothing far too cheesy either. To me, as someone who was raised in a Western environment, I don't have a lot of knowledge about the Chinese fantasy setting, which sucks. And it's good that I'm getting exposure to it now, but it's confused me. There were little cultural things that you could tell were sort of meant to have more of an impact, but as I had no idea about the history of these stories, I was just more lost than anything. Like this main bad woman is a mermaid, but the actual mermaids are frost newts? And this woman used to be a rabbit. I still don't know how that can happen. As far as I can tell, once you reach a certain level of awareness, oneness with the world, power, you can change form into a more human one. I am going to have to do some looking into these tales, but this is external work. If you are a person super into story, you will have to do some research. Have a couple tabs open on another monitor. If you don't care about the story, it's not going to screw you over too much just to gloss over everything either. If you are one of those people into story, the game has a system called biographies, where you unlock little quests that form short stories for the world around you. It's not usually any combat, it's just talking to people and looking for certain objects and relics, but it's nice to get a little bit of optional world building. Last I checked, there are around 70 of these you can unlock, so you won't run out immediately if you do devour the world. Alright, so looking at dungeons. I haven't disliked a single dungeon I've done yet. I don't even have a favourite. They're all very solid instances. Good fights, trash isn't too much or too little, bosses have unique mechanics, and my DPS still stand in anything that makes them take damage. The normal mode dungeons are pretty much on farm for most people now, and it's only been a week, which I enjoy. I still get into the occasional scream match with my monitor when it comes to some players, but that's more the players, not the dungeons themselves. When you queue for these dungeons, you're automatically swapped to the correct spec when you load in as well. It's great. Not having to worry as you quest and do dailies as DPS while you wait for queue to pop, it's the little things. It also seems that tanks are the role needed most, so most hard groups I've tried to queue for get healers pretty fast. It's the tank weight that's the issue. So keep that in mind when you choose a class. I have a love-hate relationship with the first boss of Chao Prison. That large attack he does at about 30%, I've had to learn, through trial and error, and many dead DPS, to save my cooldowns for it. And it feels good to know these bosses. It feels good to have learned all these different mechanics. And this just might be because the game is new. But I've had several new experiences with other MMO dungeons before, and you very quickly find one or two you refuse to do. I have not found that so far with this game. So I have to give props to these dungeon designers. I love it so far. Dungeons also have checkpoints you can teleport to, which is the absolute best. So now we can look at the more casual stuff in this game. I was a bit skeptical when I looked at the amount of leisure activities you could do in this game. Alright, collectathon, and to kill these targets, yada yada, same old, same old. I was wrong. These are really enjoyable for the most part, and I'm liking them more than I thought I would. Treasure hunting involves you buying a map, using it at a respawn point, and then matching the treasure map up with your area map. It's just match the picture with your map, really, then go to that spot and start looking. You'll follow some loud as all hell audio cues and then loot your box, which will give you a currency for the treasure map vendors. Easy peasy. It's quite a good time killer when you're waiting for dungeons or friends to get to a certain quest. You can also find treasures in the world, and it's very satisfying to find those. They give you collectibles, which are effectively toys. Use them to summon some sassy cats or turn into a goose. 10 out of 10, game of the year. So, bounty hunting and emerald lanterns are painted with the same brush. Use an item ability thingo to enter another world arena to kill the bad guys there. Both give weekly rewards and require certain amounts of people to kill certain tiered mobs. But they're also really enjoyable. It's nice to have some big bad mobs to force you out into the world to hunt. It gets you out of the capital city between instances, which I've noticed a lot of MMOs suffer from. So to have a reason to do the casual player stuff for weeklies or dailies in your cultivation menu is a great thing. And I like how well it's encouraged me to do things out of my comfort zone. Except PvP. Nope, nah, never, not touching it. So with any kind of game like this, there is going to be a cash shop. Guild Wars has farming nodes and infinite pickaxes and shit in their premium currency store. They have elements of pay to win. This game does not. And if it continues to stay like this, even if I don't main this game, I will always be coming back. I am very impressed so far, and I can do nothing but sing praises right now. At its current point, Solo is a great game. I am enjoying it. I am just straight up having fun. And apart from issues caused mostly by latency or bad translations, and oh boy, there are a lot of those, this game is absolutely brilliant, and I cannot recommend it enough. If you get a chance, pick it up. If not, keep an eye out for a Steam sale or something. You'll at the very least enjoy the leveling experience. Find yourself a good guild and you'll be set. Enjoy the new MMO you'd never thought you'd be playing. And I very quickly started skimming these skeins. Skimming the skeins. I'm skeening, yes.